Hey crew, today we have a Solar Titan build that I have to say is still one of my favorite builds to run. There is just something so satisfying about making a fusion grenade explode on impact and watch as that deadly solar wake just destroys everything. Then in its wake it leaves a sunspot and solar well, so we have double healing from the sunspot and solar well, and then triple ability regen with the exotic, the sunspot, and the solar wells. All the gameplay you will see is from the Grandmaster Strike, Master Lost Sector, and a normal Lost Sector with champions, just so you can get a good understanding of the power that is there when it comes to this build and the Solar Titan in general. The Solar Titan has the best builds in my opinion, of course, out of the three classes, because it just provides that restoration for free essentially with the sunspots, and that's probably one of the strongest abilities in the game. Which is kinda why Bungie is nerfing restoration next season, as we saw from the last week's TWAB, and let me tell you this, if you struggle in any content, restoration will still be just as strong, because to be able to continuously heal is very, very strong in of itself. That is why I always take Well of Life if possible in any type of build, but even with the restoration changes where they're cutting it back by about 15 to 20%, it still will be very strong and still the best option in pretty much any content if you need help with survivability. So if you're someone that's still not as good at the game as other players and you need a little bit of help, restoration will still be there for you and just as strong, I promise you that. All in all, this is still one of my favorite builds in the game, and since it's been about 10 months since I covered it, I thought it was well past due to bring it forward into the Solar 3.0 meta for you guys. For the Sunbreaker subclass, you want to use Hammer of Soul or Burning Maul, whatever super you want. Burning Maul did get a buff not too long ago, so it's kind of nice now. For the abilities, we're going to be using Rally Barricade because it has a quicker cooldown. If you need the tall one, go ahead and use it, but I'm using Rally Barricade just to get it back quicker. We're also taking advantage of Throwing Hammer here. Throwing a hammer from a distance, picking up Throwing Hammer fully recharges your melee ability. If the hammer struck a target, picking it up grants a cure, so you can heal yourself when you pick up the hammer. We have a ranged melee, and this melee is going to create sunspots for you, and we always have it as long as we pick up our hammer. For your grenade, we're going to be using Fusion Grenade, an explosive grenade that attaches to targets, damaging and moderately scorching them on hit. What we're going to do is use an exotic to make this thing even better. And then for our aspects, we're going to be using Soul Invictus, Solar Ability Final Blows, Hammer of Soul impacts, and defeating scorched targets creates sunspots. Your abilities regenerate faster, and your super drains more slowly while standing in a sunspot. Sunspots apply Scorch and deal damage to targets inside. Entering a sunspot applies restoration. So there's a lot going on with sunspots, which is why it makes it some of the strongest abilities in the game. So basically, when you create a sunspot from an ability kill, so either that throwing hammer or your fusion grenade, you're going to get increased ability regeneration, you're going to heal with restoration, it's going to scorch targets and damage targets that are inside of it. So it does a lot for your overall build, and the main thing is restoration. Restoration is so strong that it just heals and heals through a lot of damage that we take in most content in the game. Next, we're going to take Roaring Flames. Final blows with solar abilities or ignitions increase the damage of your solar abilities, and it stacks 3 times. While Roaring Flames is active, your uncharged melee attack deals solar damage and scorches targets. So the main thing with this is we just want to stack this up to 3 times using our throwing hammer or our fusion grenades and getting kills. It has an 18-second cooldown time, so as long as you get a kill within 18 seconds, you're always going to have Roaring Flames times 3 up. And what this does is makes those abilities that much stronger, which means that fusion grenade and that hammer can easily kill something and spawn the sunspot and just loop our abilities over and over. For the fragments, we're taking Ember of Torches, so we become radiant and our allies become radiant for that 25% weapon damage boost. We're going to make this last longer, but this is just a nice cherry on the top, so when you're doing boss damage or anything like that, make sure to hit it with that throwing hammer to make everybody radiant. For the next, we're going to take Ember of Solace. Radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. This is really nice in general just with the sunspot, because when you create that sunspot, normally when you walk into it, you only have about 5 seconds of restoration. This is going to put it up to 8 or 9 seconds of restoration. So initially it lasts longer, and then what that does is it allows us to chain it into Ember of Empyrean. Solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you. So now every time we get a solar weapon kill or an ability final blow, which would be our strong fusion grenades and throwing hammer with Roaring Flames times 3, we're always going to be creating sunspots, and it's just going to make everything last longer. So the nice thing about Ember of Empyrean is if you forget to step into a sunspot, or you're kind of far away from a sunspot and you just don't want to risk your life to go get into that sunspot, you can just extend the previous restoration that you already have with your abilities without having to overcommit. And then the next thing is Ember of Singeing. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets. This one can be traded out with a lot of different ones if you prefer something anything else. I just like this to get my barricade back quicker because that barricade's doing a lot of stuff for me. For the stats on the build, 100 resilience, obviously for that 40% damage reduction. I have 100 discipline, and then the other stats you can do whatever you want. The discipline is there just in case you miss your fusion grenade or for whatever reason you didn't get the regen back from it. The initial base cooldown of the fusion grenade is only 1 minute and 13 seconds, so with 100 discipline you're getting that thing back very quickly. It's a 28-second grenade cooldown time when you have 100 discipline, so that's very nice. For the weapons in the build, just make sure you use anything that you need to match champions. I would say if you can do anything with incandescent, that just adds to the overall build, but you don't necessarily need it. Our exotic of choice is going to be Ashen Wake. So the armor perk here is Bring the Heat. Fusion grenades now explode on impact and gain increased throw speed, so basically fastball. And then final blows with fusion grenades grant grenade energy. The more stronger the target is, the more grenade energy you get. So just a normal red bar gives you about 25% grenade back, but if you do kill a champion with it, you get a full refund of that grenade. So remember that. The amount of target, you know, how healthy that target is or how difficult that target is to kill, that's what gives you the overall grenade back. So if you get 2 kills with just throwing your grenade on 2 red bars, you'll normally get that grenade back because you're going to pick up your solar wells and then you're going to throw your hammer for the next part of it. For the mods on the build, on the helmet, we're running double ashes to assets, gain bonus super energy on grenade kills. We're using those fusion grenades. We're going to get a ton of kills, and that's just going to add to the overall build. We have Font of Might on the helmet as well. This can be traded out for anything that you want within this build. So remember that this is like your flex spot, because Font of Might does get overwritten by our Radiant buff, and we're always basically have our Radiant buff up with our throwing hammer in a lot of content, so this spot is open. On your gauntlets, we're going to take Bountiful Wells, so it's going to double up our well generation on our well generating mods, and then also slot in your champion mod, so in the gameplay I add Unstoppable Pulse Rifle on in the Lost Sector, and then we have Impact Induction. Causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. You want to slot this one on if you can, because every time you throw that throwing hammer and hit a target, you're going to proc Impact Induction, which is going to feed the grenade. For your chest piece, we're going to take Melee Well Maker, so every time we kill something with our throwing hammer, it's going to spawn 2 wells because of Bountiful Wells. We also have Thermoshock Plating on here for our damage resistance and Concussive Dampener, so just take extra damage resistance in your chest piece. For the boots, we have Well of Life. Picking up a Solar Elemental Well grants increased regeneration for a short period of time, so this is just going to add extra healing on top of the build. So we have Well of Life, and then we also have Restoration from the Sunspots. So 2 different ways that we're healing with this build, which is nice. I'm not sure if this is still going to stack come next season, because they did say in the TWAB that, let's say, like a Healing Rift won't stack with Restoration, but they did specifically say Healing Rift, so I'm not sure if it's just the strongest heal will overwrite the lower heal. But Well of Life is a mod, and it's coming from a well, and I think it's about 13 HP per second, so I believe that this will still stack, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then on our class item, we have Elemental Ordnance, so defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an Elemental Well. Obviously, we're going to spawn 2 of these with that Bountiful Wells, so those fusion grenades are going to spawn 2 wells. Our hammer is going to spawn 2 wells, creating Sunspot with both of them. So it's just a bunch of ability energy and healing coming from any ability final blow. We also have Double Bomber on the class item, reduce grenade cooldown when using your class ability. This just feeds into that barricade. Because that barricade only has a 30-second cooldown time, our Sunspots makes it quicker, picking up wells makes it quicker, we can pop it more often, which means we're just proccing Double Bomber more often. And we also have the Ember of Singeing. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets, so we're feeding into that barricade and popping it as often as possible if we need a little top off to our grenade. That is the Bring the Heat, the Ashen Wake solar build. I hope you guys found this video helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. It's still one of my favorite builds in the game. And if you haven't seen the last couple builds I put out, the Arc Hunter build that you might see on screen here is very, very good. So you guys should go check that out. It can solo Grandmasters very easily. And I hope you guys found this video helpful. I will see you guys all in the next one, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it.